Hello to those who are already in the class, and thank you for attending. This is my first time doing the online thing, so if anybody has experience doing this and would like to give feedback, I'd appreciate it if you email me later. My name is Lady Aksenia, used to be called Rohija Anvin of Thessaloniki. Um, you may see guest instructor. My cat likes to jump on my lap, so she may or may not be joining us for the session. All right, so this class is going to cover the different types of tools that you may need, safety, legalities of collecting the earth pigments, choosing your locations, how to actually harvest them and then process them to use for later art materials, and storing and use. So it's pretty basic. Obviously, it's earth pigments. It's dirt, so you're going to want shovels. You can use big garden shovels depending on what you're doing. I like to pack hand trowels. Those are really easy to put into like a backpack or a hiking pack if you're really going out and adventuring. Buckets. You could also do gallon or quart size bags. I've even used grocery bags that really just is dirt at this point, so it doesn't matter what it is, just know that it's going to get dirty. For the later processes, you'll need sifting implements of some kind, dollar store, Dollar Tree type sifting tools are perfect. The mortar and pestle, I would say, really is your biggest investment. You want that to be granite or some kind of hard stone because you are going to use and abuse this tool the most. Um, and then any kind of clear containers, and I'll kind of get into that later. This is for the cleaning process, but then also the storing. And then, of course, we'll need water. So safety, anytime you're working with pigments, whether it's earth pigments, mineral pigments, any kind of dust-like material for art projects, you are going to want to be conscious of not inhaling any of the dust. The danger with working with earth pigments is you do not know exactly how much silicon is in the actual earth. And the problem with that is it's colorless and odorless. So even if you see dust, that might be something else with it. And you don't want to just assume, oh, well, there's not a whole lot of dust, it's not a big deal. Silicosis is a disease that can occur if you inhale silicon dust, and it's not treatable, it's not irreversible. So keep safety in mind. Ventilated area, what I would like to say about that is don't just be like outside, because while yes, that's well ventilated, you'll want to have a fan or something that is blowing the dust away from you, as well as wearing a mask. Um, Site safety, that is going to be, if you're hiking or exploring, obviously, you don't want to trip, fall, definitely tell people where you're at if you're going by yourself. Later, next slide, we'll talk about the legalities of trespassing, that sort of thing. And just be aware of your surroundings, because when you're out in nature, you don't know what kind of critters and animals are out there, because now you're in their home. So you don't want to be taken unaware and get bit by a snake or bit by an animal, that sort of thing. So for the legality, obviously don't trespass. Best thing is to ask permission. Like if it's a friend's house and you want to, they got a creek in the backyard, that's perfect. Just don't roll up somewhere and be like, oh wow, that looks like a cool patch of dirt, and start digging, because you can get in trouble for that. Be careful collecting. There may be public areas next to, like, say, state parks or federal land. Be careful that you don't collect there also. It is illegal and you can be charged for collecting materials from those areas. Um, Outside of that, choosing your location. So obviously your backyard, friends, family with permission are going to be your best options, especially if you kind of don't know what you're doing and you want to like, play around and figure out how to do this earth pigment foraging and processing it. Um, so it's going to be the easiest. Public places, there are places where you can, I'm sure some places will be like, you want dirt? Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't really care. Places that I've went to are pay to dig mines. I actually have a couple. I live in South Carolina, so I've been to Diamond Hill Mine, and they literally, you pay $20 for the day and you go and you can dig up rocks. And I've brought back clay and different types of things, and they're just like, okay, cool, whatever, it's just dirt to us. What to look for is creeks and rivers. We're especially after a rain event, you'll see maybe like a sandbar or like just patches of area. And I've got pictures later on where I kind of illustrate this, where clay type material might collect. And there's things like river rocks is what I like to call them, that you'll be able to find. And eventually, as you do this, if you do this, it'll become more obvious as you do it. There's really no substitute for experience. So it's just kind of get out there and learn it with your own hands and your own eyes. Rain gullies are another good one because they've taken away some of the surface contaminants, debris, like leaf sticks, that sort of thing. And what you're left with in these rain gullies are more the kind of pure clays. You might also see surface deposits. So as you explore locations, I mean, you might be at a friend's house or family's house and go, oh wow, like the dirt kind of changes over there. Let me go kind of dig around a little bit, and you might find like a different color of earth or clay that will work for a pigment. So harvesting the earth, you see the picture with my hand in the water? That's what I call a river rock. They look like rocks, which is why I call them that. But then on the left side, you could see where I basically took it and just rubbed it against like a larger actual rock, and it paints like a crayon. So that's one way to check to see if that's something going to work for a pigment. Another method is where it's kind of my pointer finger. I've just kind of picked up some clay that I found on the ground and just rubbed it between my fingers. And, if it's really sandy, it's just going to break apart. It's not going to be really that great of pigment to work with. It's going to require more volume to clean and get rid of the heavier sediment in the sand. And that bottom picture is from the mine that I was telling you about. So you could see there, I'm almost like able to dig out like a nice pure clump of clay, and that's going to be easier to process. And that's the typical South Carolina red clay. I can find that for days, but I found other colors which I'll show you later. So here's an example of a creek bed, and at first glance, you might see a few colors. When I come to a location like this, I'm looking for a few things. Like I said, the Carolina clay, I can find that all day long. But so that's the number one area. Red clay, can find that everywhere here in Carolinas. Number two is going to be, you can kind of see where it's like kind of rocky in chunks. If that is chunks of clay, what I'll do with the trowel, the hand trowel, is just kind of break away pieces of that and try to keep it intact. And then when I take it home for further processing, that clay clump or that deposit's going to be, if it's solid, then what I can do is like gently wipe away like the sand and the bigger debris that I don't want, and have a more pure sample. Number three, same thing, because that one's not as like rocky outcrop, but it looks very solid. It's been kind of washed away by, the higher water levels. That's probably going to be a really nice, pure sample. Number four is interesting because you can kind of see two different colors in there. It's almost like a black and a white. And that, again, I would just start digging away with my trawl and see what I can pick up. 5 and 6 are where you're gonna find the river rocks. Number 6, you can see where there's like a collection of different rocks and different things. So they'll get kind of filtered right there and collect in that area. And then number 5, you can still find them in there, and you might actually find not necessarily river rocks, but like clay deposit clumps. And if you're careful, you can, pick those up with your hand or the trowel and then put that like in a Ziploc bag because it's going to be more squishy, but it is still something you can work with. So for processing the earths, this is back home. You don't really want to do this on site because this is the most time consuming thing. So you've already transported everything. Some of it might be dry because when I collect my samples, I might not touch them again for like a few weeks. They've dried out. So you can see there's some clay samples where the far right, where it's got different kind of clays all mixed in it, you can see some like tree roots, plant roots, and it's probably got sand and everything in there. So uh what I do is I put that in the mortar and pestle, and I break it up in that kind of that purple clump there on the left bottom of the pictures. And I just break it up into smaller pieces depending on how large of an overall sample that I have. I might just break it into like smaller chunks and then do the next section until I've got all like the same size and then break it down further. And then what you want to do is this middle picture on the left. I was trying to find a way to illustrate to you when you mix up the earth sample into water, like some of those tree roots, plant roots, they're going to float to the top. So those will be easy to kind of skim off and get rid of. And you just keep stirring it until you get it going really good. And then you just let it settle. And this picture kind of shows you where on the very bottom is the heavier sediment and the rocks and the sand. In the middle at the top is kind of the more softer material that is actually what you're going to use for pigments. And while it's in this kind of suspension, I actually will pour that off, then pour more water into the first container and swirl it around, get more of the lighter materials to come out, and I'll pour that into next. So I've had it to where my counter has like 6 or 7 different containers where I've just kind of did the wash, pour, and then eventually what you'll end up with is a more pure sample. And then with the heavier debris, I just throw that out. I mean, it's dirt, so I just throw it in my backyard. The top left sample is an example of one where I've done the wash and I've let it dry. And what I've used is glass jars. So like the yogurt containers that are glass work great because you can just put it in there. I put it actually, the glass jars in my food dehydrator because it's got just enough heat and movement of air so it'll actually dry it up really quick. I put it in my garage. Over time, the water will evaporate. But then I'm left with a little pod, kind of like what you see there. And then again, you can process that later. So you're going to kind of go back to step 1 and you're going to break it apart. And if you've missed any rocks or anything, it'll be kind of obvious. And then what you can do is take the sifter, which you see there on the right picture, is just like a tea strainer almost. And then that's the part where you definitely want to make sure you're wearing the mask. Any point of this process except when you're working with water, but definitely when you're sifting it, because that's where you're going to have those fine particles. And the fine particles are what you want to paint with. So for storing, I like to use the good old fashioned buckets from like Home Depot and Lowe's, that sort of thing. I can get a lot of uh, clay just to get it off site. This picture here is where I was at the mine. There was an interesting deposit of white clay, which I found that South Carolina, interestingly, has deposits of kaolin clay. So I've actually, that in particular, I've actually processed or collected as a sample because I want to process it into a ceramic, which, it's clay, so we can do pigments and ceramic. But I have found white clay in other areas where I've collected samples and I have processed it. It really makes a great filler material because it itself is clay. So when you mix it with other clays, it can lighten the pigment, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So if you found like a really gnarly, like I found a really cool purple pigment, but the white was mixed all up into it. So I had to carefully pick out the white, which thankfully is lighter, and the purple one was stiffer. So because what I found when I ground that pigment, if I had any of the white in it, it would mute it. So it can be kind of frustrating, but as you do more pigment foraging, you'll kind of know like what kind of samples to look for, how to dig them up, and then how to transport them out so you don't contaminate colors and then you end up not having the sample that you thought you had. After processing, because of that dust inhalation exposure hazard, you do want to keep it in an airtight container. So using the earth pigment, once you've done this whole process, now we can finally get to the point of actually making this to make pretty things. So you can make paint out of it, whether that's for an ANS display. You can do this for scrolls. There are different types of paint, which I won't go into the recipes, but I am teaching a class on the different paint recipes later this afternoon. You have gouache, which I would say is the easiest one to start with. Minimal effort on your part. There's easy to store. You can actually reconstitute it because the gouache it's a watercolor. So in essence, you're just mixing a pigment, a gum arabic, maybe a little bit of honey, that's optional, and water, and that's it. You've got paint. And I've done like a little sample card, just kind of testing out my pigments so I know what colors I have. And even in that one, I didn't add the honey, just the gum arabic, pigment, and water, and that would work perfect for ANS scrolls. So, because by the time somebody gets it, there it's going to be behind glass and nothing's going to happen. Where you might want to have a thicker or more stickier binding agent like the honey might be for some other project that might be handled like a wood stain. You might add a different type of binder to that. ANS display. So I'll show you a picture of my ANS display at the end. You can do collaborations. So one of the things that people would put for feedback when I displayed just the pigments are, okay, what are you going to do with it next? And I'm like, there doesn't always have to be a next, but I just want to collect all the different art supplies was my main goal. So starting with earth pigments. Yes, I could make scrolls and other things, but I found that it's more fun to like collaborate with other artists because you kind of one, you're working with other folks that maybe they don't have time to do the earth pigments, or maybe they don't have locations where they can go, or they're just not able to go collect the earth pigments. So now you can collaborate with other people. And I've done that. I'm waiting for the results. But I've sent out an envelope with earth pigment samples to people around the US side of the SCA, and I'm waiting to see what they make with it. Another thing you can do is mini artist kits. You can do it as largesse that you give away, or maybe largesse that you add to like a gift basket or something. What I would say is be sure to put a warning label on it for that dust inhalation hazard, just in case somebody gets a hold of it and doesn't know, or like if a kid tries to open it, that sort of thing. And I would double seal it, that sort of thing. Definitely give it with instructions. So I am going to hold off questions because I've got a little bit of time. So I was going to show you, I'm going to turn my camera on and I'm going to show you some of the materials and different things that I've used I've got some samples of pigments and that sort of thing. This is an example of what I've done for displaying for ANS. The little plastic containers work great because then I can number them and then they coordinate to my documentation, but also people can pick them up. I've got it taped, so even if they want to try to open it, they'd have to like cut open the tape. And at that point, you're kind of doing the wrong thing with someone's ANS display, but they can pick it up, they can look at it and, shift the pigment around, in safely shift it around in the containers. So let me switch. So, okay. I did this earlier, but it wasn't in this. I figure out how to switch cameras. Ah, here we go. I have a second camera here and some samples. So this is an example of a red clay pigment. It's got all sorts of stuff in it, but it's solid. I can transport it easily in a bucket. Um, I can literally like just dig it up on site and then take it home. Then um I've got some other samples. So this is the like hockey puck looking one that I said, put it in a yogurt jar and now I've got it for later. This could quite literally, you could break this like in half and maybe use that as like a large S artist kit, that sort of thing, because that is going to produce a lot of paint too. So you could also break it into smaller chunks. This is the river rock that I was talking about, these three. This one's kind of broke open so you can kind of see the color.
Roisha, if you stop sharing your slides, it would actually make your other camera bigger.
Oh, let me see.
And I put your contact email in the chat for everyone.
I
And there
thought
is a question in there.
oh, I see. Stop screen share. Stop share. All right, did that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Oh,
there
there.
is a question in there. Can you see it or do you want me to read it to you?
Uh, Read it to me because I missed it.
It says, when mixing your pigment kits that you gift away, do you add gum arabic or other binders before gifting it?
You can. Just be sure that you've used distilled water. Because otherwise, like if it still stays in like a moist formula, it could mold over. Or what you could do is add a like little vial or something of the gum arabic to where they can mix it themselves. It's kind of however you want to present it. All right, so this one is an example of the clay. You can shape it in your hand. So basically I made like a little like a Scrabble tile sized piece and then I just let it dry. That would be another way you could kind of package up for large S. But then also when you're on site and you're processing or trying to figure out if something's going to process well, you know that that's like pure clay and you'll be able to use that for pigment. This is the purple one that I was telling you about. This is probably a manganese deposit. What I've found with the more mineral ones, this is one that I got from Arizona from a friend. Um, the mineral ones are a little bit harder on your mortar and pestle because now we're it's it's much harder than clay, obviously. So that's where I say your mortar and pestle is going to be your best investment, and you're going to use and abuse it because processing these two, man, I get really tired. My mortar and pestle get tired, but it produces a really pretty pigment. And this is just another sample. This is the white um the white clay. And if I wanted to, I could probably like break this apart right here, but this one's pretty solid. Here's some mystery one. I got this from a river, kind of on the South Carolina, Tennessee border. This thing is solid. I thought at first maybe it was like asphalt or something like that, but what I do is if I'm not entirely sure on site, is I just throw it in the bucket or a bag and then look at it later because things will look different in the field than they will back home. And this one produces a really, really, really nice dark brown. You do see some orange in there, but that's just the Carolina red clay kind of sticking to they call it peanut butter in the rock hounding world. So that'll just wash away. But that dark brown, this is probably like my hardest one, hardest in difficulty and hardest in like the hardness level. Um, and I think I actually need to get, well, not think, I am going to be getting a different mortar and pestle that can stand up to the abuse of the harder ones because this one definitely I thought I was going to break my mortar and pestle, but it just produces a really nice dark brown color and I really want to process it some more. So I'm going to show you now some pigments after process. So this is the um, samples that I had sent out to people to collaborate. And as you can tell, there's a whole wide color range. And these are all found in South Carolina. Because I originally started this as, okay, there's tons of red clay for days. I should be able to make pigment out of that. And as I've done this more, I realized, wow, there's actually a lot of colors, a lot more than I thought. So this is that purple that I was telling you about that was pretty rough to process in the mortar and pestle, and this is that dark brown. Here's just another sample of one that I found. It was actually recently at a construction site, because sometimes I find myself there, and I just picked this up, but it breaks apart really easily. As you can tell, it just looks like sand in here. But this one is probably going to end up turning into like a sparkly kind of pigment because of the mica. You can kind of see the shimmering in it. Um, and that could be desired or not desired. So again, this is where you want to make sure you don't contaminate your samples because I do have some other clay from the same area that doesn't have large amount of mica deposits. This one was found in the same site. As you tell, it's a completely different color. It's kind of got more of a yellow orangey color versus the Carolina red, which even though these are the same Carolina red, um, they're still two distinct different colors. So again, once you find like a deposit or good chunk of clay or a rock, you want to keep them separate so that you can have a wide variety of colors. Which is a good thing and a bad thing. Good thing because you get a variety of colors, but then if you only have so much of one color, that's like that hue or shade, that's all you have. And again, here is some of the samples where I put them in the jars so people can, see what they look like without actually being exposed to dust. This might be too close, but this is my mortar and pestle. Actually, let me switch cameras. Everything changed. Let me go down here. Nope. There. There's so many options on here when you're in the teacher. Okay. So this is the mortar and pestle. It's just granite. I think I got this like at an India grocery, which is way cheaper than say like World Market. It was like probably like a third of the price. What I'm thinking of getting is another bigger mortar pestle out of granite so I can process the really thick, hard to literally hard to break apart ones. Other materials or tools, running out of space. So airtight container. So anything with a seal. You can go to IKEA. I've found I think this particular one at like Hobby Lobby, Michaels, that sort of thing. Um, Another example of a mortar and pestle, if you have somebody who makes ceramics, I can make you one like this. I had done like a A&S exchange and there was a lady who made this for me and it's the same idea and this would be great for some of those softer clays to process because like the mortar and pestle I have over there it's a little bit smaller so this is a bigger surface area to work with. Um, when you're doing the cleaning, I like to sometimes use these for the smaller samples and just fill it up with water, process it, or old spaghetti sauce jars work great. I like working with glass just because it's easier to clean. And then the plastic, it's just, I try to be more earth friendly. But I just happen to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And that's the yogurt jar. I would fill this all the way up with the cleaned pigment, put it in my dehydrator, and boom, I would have, the hockey puck that I was telling you about, this little guy. All right, I think I'm good. Does anybody want to see some more stuff? Have any questions? Um, we'll show you my paint chip cards. So this was on a pre-painted gesso board you can get from the art supply, but it's modern gesso. So I need to redo these with period gesso because as you can tell, it flakes off. It was a great idea. But what I learned from displaying them at A&S is that it don't like the modern gesso at all. And I've worked with egg temper paints, and if you do a period gesso, it latches right into that and doesn't go anywhere. Is there a way I could see the chat? Because like I see it pops up and then oh wait, here we go.
It that someone asked, have you used scoria?
I don't know what scoria is. Could whoever asked that turn on your mic and or put it in the chat?
Scoria is a baked coal.
Baked coal. I don't think I've heard of that actually.
It's in the North Dakota area.
Oh, okay.
Comes in very vibrant colors of orange, pink, red, purples. I know as a kid I used to use them as kind of like chalk on sidewalk.
Oh, neat. I'll have to ask my brother. He lives in Fargo, so send me dirt.
Because is it just clays you use, or can you use like rocks and stuff?
I haven't gotten to the point of like say like processing like this azurite that I got from a friend in Arizona because it's just so hard and I just haven't done the minerals yet. I want to do also the lapis lazuli and use the Sadini recipe where he extracts like the pure blue out of it. But it's just time, money, mostly time.
Can I make a suggestion on the rock?
Mhm.
Coming at it from a rock hound and jeweler point of view, if you have access to or want to invest in one of the tile slabbing machines, they're fairly inexpensive. And you could get your larger rocks down to particle size by just slicing very, very thinly through there and let them kind of get to the crumbly stage. I know when we do slabs of rocks, heavy, harder ones, you end up with sludge in the bottom of your
Hmm.
machine
Yeah, I was just
that
thinking that.
would
Yeah.
be good particle size to start with, and the cabochon machine as well.
Yeah, I haven't
So that might,
investigated the cabochon yet, but I do have the
yeah.
tile saw. I didn't think about that. That's a good suggestion, especially for those harder ones that I'm not sure what in the world.
Hmm. I was wondering if that black looking one that turned brown might have been coal, but it doesn't seem likely that it would be turning to brown if it was.
Yeah, yeah. Because I've got some iron oxide that I've found that's just about as hard as that. I haven't processed it yet, but it makes me curious how close that is to like the red clay I have since it's similar, but
Yeah.
I haven't processed that one yet.
Hmm. But yeah, when you might start with a sledgehammer with some of the chunks
Hmm.
to break them down as far as you can before you start with the mortar and pestle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
So
good
Drifa
suggestion.
had a question.
Hmm.
I hope I said your name right. It says from your collaboration kit, the multiple baggies, the second to the right one looked green.
Yeah,
Besides the purple, does it paint on green? Does the raw clay look green like that? And Drifa, you
yeah,
can
it's
unmute if you want to explain that question a little more.
so that was this colored one. It's a very light green, like more pastel-y than like a solid green. Um, again, I need to redo my paint chip that I did, but that is that one right there. It looks really brown on the camera, but in person, it's got more kind of pukey green, pastel green. But working with like a pigment kit from an art supplier, you're definitely going to get more the vibrant kind of Crayola type colors. And I don't think there's any harm in mixing and then getting the color hues and shades that you want. I just think it's kind of cool to do the earth pigments, collect them, and it's kind of like the fiber folks where they start with like the wool and then they make the thread and then they make the whether it's a hat or whatever type of clothing material. It's kind of in the same realm.
And did it look green when it was in the clay form, raw clay?
Yes. This I don't think I have a green one out, but it's very similar to this one because I found them in the same area. This one's got more of like a slate blue, and at first I thought they were the same color, and I started realizing, oh wait, one's more blue, one's more green. So I had to be very careful about my river rocks because that's how I was able to get basically these two colors. You can kind of tell the difference where one's more greenish and blue.
And Hillary asked, have you tested how light fast these pigments are?
So the great thing about earth pigments is they're completely light fast. So if you look at, historical examples, as say like cave paintings, that sort of thing, that's why they've lasted so long. There's even some churches more modern in the sense of like Renaissance era, that sort of thing, that have been painted fresco style with earth pigments and have lasted until our time. So that's kind of another reason why I wanted to dive more into the earth pigments versus like lake pigments or some other type of things, because as long as you have your paint mixture and your binders, you have that ratio and you're using good materials, your paint's gonna last.
Christina mentioned that she got a very large mortar and pestle at Costco last summer. Um, and and they already have one, but they need to get one for the Scrabble kit.
Oh,
And then
nice.
we had a discussion in the chat about state park areas and getting permission.
Mhm.
And I just happened to work for the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and I know you can get permits in Connecticut to go on state lands on certain parks, and dig and get minerals. And we actually have garnet collecting, and but other state parks you cannot take anything from.
Mhm.
And someone put a resource in there for the Department of Wildlife Resources from Virginia, because it seems to be where the majority of people are from. And we also talked about you can also call a county or town park and try and get a permission to take from there too.
Mhm. And then
Um,
that's the biggest thing is don't ask first and then, or do first and then ask for forgiveness. Make sure you have the permission up front. I think it was in Arizona. I never got a chance to go there when I was in Arizona, but there was a state park that's literally like a rock hounding park. So it just do your research and get permission or permits. I haven't done that yet, mainly because I've so much around here in South Carolina, but at some point, if there's like a special pigment or rock, I might venture out that way.
and then Wilson asked, how do you start making a binder for the pigments?
Okay, so that depends on what type of paint you're wanting to do, and that's again a class I'm teaching later this afternoon because it's its own thing. One thing I found with the gouache, so I said that one was the easiest one to start out with for paint recipe. You can get gum arabic from typical art supply, but I found that that was really expensive. Whereas I could go get a bag of raw gum arabic at like an Indian grocery for $1, and I didn't think it was going to make as much as it did because I bought 3 bags. And the one bag, it I have enough for days. Like that's where I kind of got the idea of, hey, maybe I can do an artist kit because I've got gum arabic that I'm never gonna be able to use up. And it made like 10 times the amount of what I got from the artist store. Now mine is a little bit rough because it's not as pure, but if I were to do some more filtering of the gum arabic solution when you, because basically take, it looks like little rocks, the raw gum arabic, you put that, you boil that in water and you create the solution from that. And the problem with that is it's going to have wood particles in it and that sort of thing, so you want to filter it. But otherwise, I did a little paint chip thing for the red Carolina clay, and I just did different levels of the gum arabic. I didn't add any other and water. I didn't add anything else to it because I just wanted to see, does it matter how much gum arabic or not? And you won't be really see that in here maybe, but the more saturated is a little bit more shinier, but not sticky, if that makes sense. Whereas if I were to add the honey or something like that, it's going to make it a little bit stickier. And being in the South, sticky and humidity do not mix. So I wanted to see if I could just do gouache with no honey, and I mean, it stays on the paper. Like I can't even scrape it off. So I figure for if I were to do a scroll, it'd be fine.
And then Hillary wrote, lapis lazuli, be careful if you use jewelry beads that are lapis to make pigment, as some may have been dyed to make the blue darker or brighter.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
It's
that's
still lapis, but just dyed, so you'll get some dye in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always the fun thing with doing any of this is you don't know what you have unless you have access to a laboratory to be able to test stuff. But yeah, lapis is still valuable. I mean, it was pretty valuable in the medieval times for artists, and it's still valuable now. I actually had a friend that was in Afghanistan and was like, "Hey, can you get me some raw lapis?" And he's like, "Nope, I can't. I can't even send that." But like if he were to find beads from a vendor or like he saw dice, he's like, I think it's probably dyed because it looks way too blue. I could send it. And I was like, no, I'll just stick to getting it from like the actual pigment from, you know, like natural pigment, earth pigments, that those kind of companies.
And then she followed up with azurite nodules are a nice light blue mineral to make pigments. So
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of excited to process that one. And you can do exchanges too. Like if you know you have earth pigment or something that I haven't showed you here today, I'd be happy to share with you some of the pigments. I can even send you like a river ox, or I've like I said, I've got Carolina red clay for days. If you don't have that near you and you want to exchange, that would be pretty easy.
and Wilson asked for harder to find pigments. Could you use undyed tumblestones rocks?
I'm not sure. That's an interesting question that I
You should be able to.
Yeah, I was gonna say
It'd be about the same as using lapis or anything else.
Mhm.
A lot of it will depend on the rock and what the mineral composition is. Some of them may have asbestos in them. So you do have to know the rock and then do a little research.
Yeah, that's another good point. I always got to be careful with what you may be putting out into your environment when you crush these unknown rocks.
Plus, the rocks are harder to crush. Like you are going to need a metal muller and mortar and pestle instead of the ceramic one for a lot of those harder stones. I was wondering also if the brown or black piece that you're not sure what it is, I wondered if that might be petrified wood.
I'm not sure.
Since it turned into a brown.
Well, because it's really, I mean, I guess I could cut it open with the tile saw, but it just, I don't know.
I think
Unless
the
you've had it.
formation of the crystals is wrong for petrified wood.
Yeah.
You got a friend who's a chemist or somebody who could do a chemical check.
Yeah. Because again, I thought it was a chunk of asphalt, because I was kind of near where a bridge was on the river, and I was like, well, it doesn't really look like asphalt because I'm around that stuff all the time. So again, I just chucked it into my bucket and looked at it later and went, I still have no idea what this is. It was something from the river. So
So I joined a little late. Where did you say you were located?
South Carolina. So Kingdom of Atlantia.
So do you have iron or rusty dirt pigment?
I haven't come across it here. Fortunately, when I was hiking in Arizona, I found some, but I was in a spot where I couldn't collect it. So I know what it looks like, but I haven't found that here. But I do know, I want to say North Carolina, I know someone who actually goes and forages for it.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm in Texas. East Texas has a ton of it.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've been wanting to forage myself. So if I do, I'll try to remember and then send you a baggie or two.
Yeah.
Because I know Spain used a lot of rusty and red and yellow pigments because that's what the earth was around them. So you found a lot of that in their scrolls.
Yeah. And that's something that I've tried going down that rabbit hole of, where certain pigments came from depending on, and there's a lot of like scientific articles out there that can dive into it, especially if you look at the Egyptian stuff. But man, that is just a rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. So I kind of just stuck to, well, I'm finding stuff in South Carolina, which is what people in period would have had, like you said, what was natural and easy access to where they were locally. And so eventually I'm going to be making a full-on scroll with all these colors. And I feel like that's doing like, sheep to cloth kind of thing, but with artist materials.